Hey, what's up, everybody? Chris here, and I'm giving you my review of Twisters, the sequel to Twister, which I believe was released in 1996. A movie that I vividly remember from when I guess I was in high school, about that age. Very much of its time, very much a disaster movie that tried to sort of survive on kind of an emotional core with well-written well, I'm not gonna say well-written characters, but sufficiently written characters. It's still kind of a nice little time capsule. I rewatched Twister after having not seen it in a long time. I got the 4K version, watched it the other night before seeing this new film, Twisters, the long, I guess, gestating sequel. And I still had fun with it. It was still enjoyable. You know, the effects, of course, have not held up great in that original movie. There's some very plasticky CGI, but that's neither here nor there. Let's talk about this sequel and what it is. And it really is, in a lot of ways, kind of a carbon copy of the original Twister. But this movie is very strange in the sense that it's basically a 2-hour-long advertisement for the state of Oklahoma. And when I say that, what I mean is that it makes it a point to hammer home this idea that Oklahoma is just super wholesome. It's just really American. You know, you got a lot of American flags. You've got rodeos. You've even got country songs talking about Oklahoma in the background. You've got good folk doing good folk types of things to help people. It was a little weird, right? It just got to the point of me, while watching this in a theater, thinking, why is this thing so centered on Oklahoma as being like the epitome of just amazingness? Which I have nothing against the state of Oklahoma. It was just weird. Like, they just kept talking about it and sort of hinting at that nonstop. So when I usually, when I'm doing my reviews, talk about what I would say are kind of the mixed aspects or negative aspects a little bit later in the review. To me, that was a weirdly distracting and kind of negative thing about the movie. Beyond that, and this is sort of contradictory sounding, I guess, based on what I was just saying. Beyond that, there's something that I really appreciate about how simple this movie is. And I appreciate that one of its core conceits is this idea that, you know, in this day and age, right? And I've seen in the news recently, actually, a lot of kind of crazy tornado situations in places like Iowa and some other Midwestern states. But this idea that this does have really dramatic impacts on people's lives. It completely upends people's lives when these tornadoes come through towns and destroy farms and communities and all of that. That is kind of a core thing here, as it was in the original Twister. And I'm glad that the filmmakers are making an effort to draw attention to that and to try and make that something that's not just pushed to the side for the sake of having an action spectacle, a disaster spectacle on the screen. Even though there is plenty of that, it's a little more deeply, I guess, rooted than that in terms of having, you know, something a little bit more worthwhile to say than to just be, you know, superficial entertainment, even though I would say it's 85 to 90% just that. So, you know, this movie, again, is all about sort of, I would say, pseudoscience, and how pseudoscience, or I don't know, they're trying to pass it off as real science, I guess, potentially, but how this science can actually stop a tornado, right? In the original movie, it was about Dorothy, all these little computer things that could fly up into a tornado and give scientists data about how it tracks, and then maybe they could develop an advanced warning system. In this movie, it's about how can we actually dissolve a tornado? How can we stop it? And this character, Kate, has come up with this idea where they take this stuff that's in diapers that absorbs moisture and just have tons of barrels of it. And that, you know, based on the correct calculations and the size of the tornado, the category, all that stuff, it could suck all of that up and create some kind of updraft or squelch the updraft to choke the tornado and make it just suddenly stop. And so that's kind of what the whole movie is building toward, is this eventual sort of confrontation where you've got this gigantic, presumably F5, I don't know if they ever actually say that's what it is, but this gigantic tornado barreling toward this Oklahoma town. They got to stop it. There's a heroic moment by the character driving a truck into it, very reminiscent of the original movie, to try and do that. But there's also kind of this borderline Lifetime romance sort of thing happening in the movie too, with this guy who's kind of a cowboy tornado wrangler, but also a YouTube personality. And so it's kind of poking fun at social media culture a little bit. And some of that humor worked. Some of it was just really overly cheesy and overly dumb. And I just kind of rolled my eyes a good bit at it. However, I found myself laughing more with this movie than at this movie. And I did find it a really kind of fun, laid-back piece of escapism in sort of that 90s sense. I mean, this felt like a throwback type of film where they were just trying to make it as streamlined as possible. And it may seem kind of contradictory to say that, you know, that wholesome bit of the movie that they really try to lean into, that I mentioned earlier in the review, is problematic and was distracting for me. It actually, you know, is something that I kind of liked about the movie too. It's simple-minded. It's kind of a feel-good movie, which seems weird for a disaster movie of this type. And so I appreciated that because you don't get a lot of those types of movies these days. So would I say it's great? No, it's not great, but I found it entertaining. I think it's worth a watch. I mean, to me, this is the epitome of a Saturday afternoon matinee type of movie. So I think with that in mind, if you go into it with that mindset, then there's a lot to appreciate here. So not amazing by any stretch of the imagination. I don't know that I would even say it's better than the first movie. I think the first movie has more well-written characters that I cared more about, that I thought were more interesting to watch when they were put into motion. But I still found this to be ultimately a worthy sequel, and it was very entertaining. So anyway, if you've seen Twisters, let me know what you think about it down in the comments below. And as always, thanks so much for watching.